Ellie woke up slowly. Her head hurt, and at first she thought she had fallen out of bed. But the surface beneath her wasn't her wooden floor. It was smooth and slightly warm. She opened her eyes and immediately wished she hadn't. She was in a round room with walls made of some strange material that seemed to glow with a soft light. There were no visible doors or windows. "What the hell?" she whispered, sitting up carefully. "You're finally awake," said a voice nearby. Ellie turned quickly. 4 women sat or stood in different parts of the round room. They all looked as confused and scared as she felt. The woman who had spoken was older, maybe in her 60s, with short gray hair and a straight posture that suggested military training. She wore pajamas just like Ellie. "I'm Patricia," the woman said. "Former Air Force colonel, though that doesn't seem to matter much at the moment." "Ellie," she replied, her mouth dry. "Where are we?" "Best guess?" "We've been abducted by aliens," Patricia said calmly, as if she was discussing the weather. One of the other women, a young girl who couldn't be more than 16 or 17, laughed nervously. "This is crazy. This doesn't happen in real life." "I'm Diane," said another woman with dark curly hair and glasses. "I teach astronomy at Portland State, and while I've spent my career telling students that intelligent alien life probably exists somewhere, I never expected to meet it like this." The fourth woman hadn't spoken yet. She sat hugging her knees to her chest, her hospital scrubs wrinkled. She looked up and gave a weak smile. "Samantha, nurse from Miami. I was working night shift and went outside for a break, then blue light." Ellie nodded. "Me too. The blue light." "I'm Brooke," the teenage girl said finally. "I was just in my bedroom in Austin, texting my friends, and then here." Patricia walked around the circular room, running her hand along the wall. No seams. No visible door. "But we got in somehow, so there must be a way out." As if responding to her words, a section of the wall suddenly became transparent, like a window appearing out of nowhere. All 5 women moved closer to look. Outside was a large space filled with strange machines. And moving among these machines were creatures unlike anything Ellie had ever seen. They were tall, much taller than humans, with slender bodies covered in shimmering scales that changed color slightly as they moved. Each had 4 arms and large, expressive eyes. They looked almost like a mix between humans and lizards, but more elegant than that description suggested. "Oh my God," Brooke whispered. "They're real aliens. They appear to be reptilian, though." "That's probably not quite right," Diane said, her scientific mind already analyzing. "The scales, the body structure, but they move more like primates." The transparent section of wall suddenly disappeared, replaced by a solid wall again. The women stepped back in surprise. "Did they know we were watching?" Samantha asked. Before anyone could answer, a different section of the wall simply vanished, creating a doorway. And through this doorway stepped one of the creatures. Up close she, was even more impressive. Nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that shifted between blue and green. Her forearms were held out slightly, palms up in what seemed like a peaceful gesture. "You are safe now," the creature said in perfect English, though her mouth didn't move quite right with the words. She must have been using some kind of translation device. "Who are you? Why have you taken us?" Patricia demanded, stepping forward bravely. "I am Zaravek, xenobiologist of the Karelian Empire," the alien replied. "We have rescued you from a terrible fate." "Rescued?" Ellie repeated. "From what?" "From consumption," Zaravek said, her large eyes blinking slowly. "Our research indicates that human males eat their females. We could not allow this to continue." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then Patricia burst out laughing. The sound was so unexpected that even Zaravek seemed startled, her scales flashing a bright purple. "You think human men eat women?" Diane asked slowly. "As in consume them for food?" "Our research is very thorough," Zaravek insisted. "We have observed many human communications where males speak of eating females, having them for dinner, finding them delicious. The evidence is clear." Brooke had covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Samantha was shaking her head in disbelief. Oh, honey, Patricia said, still chuckling. You've got it all wrong. That's not what those phrases mean. Zarovek's scales pulsed with confusion. Explain. It's slang, Ellie said carefully. Figures of speech, metaphors, not literal consumption. Yeah, Brooke added. It's about, She blushed and looked at the older women for help. Sexual activity, Diane finished bluntly. Not cannibalism. Zarovek took a step back, her scales now rapidly shifting between colors. This cannot be correct. Your research misunderstood our language, Patricia interrupted. Humans often use food-related terms for many things, including sex. It's not literal. The alien seemed genuinely distressed. If this is true, then our mission, our understanding of your species. Another alien appeared at the doorway. This one was slightly taller, with darker scales and a more commanding presence. Zarovek, what is happening? The newcomer asked in the same translated English. Captain Thelnar, Zarovek said, her voice uncertain. There may be a misunderstanding in our research. What kind of misunderstanding? The captain demanded. These humans claim that the males of their species do not actually eat the females. Captain Thelnar's scales flashed a deep red. Of course they would say that. They have been conditioned to accept their fate. This is why we removed them from male influence, to help them understand the truth. No, you don't understand, Ellie tried to explain. It's really just a figure of speech. No human eats another human. Well, there have been a few cannibals in human history, Diane muttered, but it's extremely rare and considered deeply wrong in all human cultures. Show them, Captain Thelnar ordered Zarovek. Show them the evidence we have collected. Zarovek touched something on her wrist, and suddenly the air in front of them filled with images, clips from human movies, TV shows, social media posts, even dating profiles. Look. She pointed to a movie scene where a man told a woman he would eat her up on their date. Another clip showed a man talking about having a woman for dinner. Patricia sighed heavily. Those are idioms, expressions. They're not meant to be taken literally. If you truly want to understand humans, Diane added, you need to understand that our language is full of metaphors and expressions that don't mean what they literally say. Captain Thelnar and Zarovek exchanged looks that suggested they weren't convinced. We are already on our way to the Corellian homeworld, Captain Thelnar said finally. The High Council will decide what to do with you. Until then, you will remain here. With that, both aliens left the room, the wall seamlessly closing behind them. Great, Samantha said after a moment of silence. We've been abducted by aliens because they don't understand slang. We need to make them understand, Ellie said, before this gets worse. Worse how? Brooke asked nervously. Patricia's face was grim. If they think human men are eating women, they might decide to rescue more women. Or they might decide to eliminate the threat. You mean they might attack Earth? Samantha asked, her eyes wide. We don't know what they might do, Diane said. But we need to clear up this misunderstanding as quickly as possible. Ellie sat down on the floor trying to process everything. Just yesterday, she had been a normal woman running a small farm in Montana. Now she was on an alien spaceship, trying to explain human sexual slang to lizard-like creatures with 4 arms. This is the strangest day of my life, she muttered. I think it's the strangest day in human history, Diane replied with a wry smile. First contact with an alien species, and it's all because they think men eat women for dinner. Despite everything, Ellie found herself laughing. The situation was so absurd that it was either laugh or cry. One by one, the other women joined in, their laughter echoing in the strange alien room as they hurtled through space toward an unknown world. Back on Earth, the disappearance of 5 women from different parts of the country did not go unnoticed. Rusty's frantic barking had woken Ellie's neighbor, Kate, who came to check on her friend early the next morning. Finding the house empty with the door unlocked and a shotgun on the kitchen floor, Kate immediately called the police. Similar scenes played out in Texas, Florida, Oregon, and New York. In each case, there were reports of strange blue lights in the sky before the women vanished. In a secure underground facility in Colorado, Lieutenant Amy Rivera stared at satellite images showing an unidentified object leaving Earth's atmosphere. She had been tracking unusual aerial phenomena for the past 3 years as part of a small secretive government program. Now it seemed her work had suddenly become much more important. "Play that footage again," she ordered the technician beside her. The screen showed a large, disc-shaped craft rising from Earth at incredible speed. It passed the International Space Station in seconds and soon vanished from the range of their tracking systems. "We've confirmed 5 disappearances so far," said her colleague Major Wilson. "All women, all taken during the night. Each abduction site corresponds with the craft's path." Amy nodded, her face serious. "We need to brief the President. This is a first contact situation and it appears to be hostile." On the Corellian ship, Zaravek was reviewing her research with growing distress. Could she have made such a fundamental error? She had spent years studying human communications, learning their languages, analyzing their behavior patterns. Though evidence had seemed so clear, she replayed one of the human videos that had convinced her. A human male said to a female, "You look so good, I could just eat you up." The female had laughed, seeming pleased rather than frightened. If what the abducted humans claimed was true, and this was merely a form of flirtation rather than a threat of consumption, her scales pulsed with embarrassment. Such a mistake could end her career. Worse, it could lead to an interspecies incident if the humans viewed their actions as hostile rather than helpful. She needed more information. She decided to speak with the human females again, especially the one called Ellie, who seemed the most calm and reasonable. In the holding chamber, the 5 women had been trying to understand their situation and plan what to do next. "If we can convince them they're wrong, maybe they'll take us back," Samantha suggested. "And if they don't believe us?" Brooke asked, her young face worried. "One problem at a time," Patricia said firmly. "First, we need to make them understand. The misunderstanding, then we worry about getting home." The wall opened again and Zaravek entered alone. She seemed different somehow. Her posture less confident, her scales a muted green rather than the vibrant colors they had seen before. "I wish to speak with you," she said, "to understand better." "We're happy to explain," Diane offered. "Cultural misunderstandings happen even between different human groups." "I would like to speak with Ellie," Zaravek said, focusing on the farm woman. "Alone, if possible." The others looked at Ellie, who nodded. "It's fine. I'll talk with her." Zaravek led Ellie through the opening in the wall. They walked down a curved corridor into another room, smaller than the holding chamber but similarly designed. There were 2 raised platforms that seemed to serve as seats. "Please sit," Zaravek said, indicating one of the platforms. Ellie sat down, finding the surface surprisingly comfortable. Zaravek sat on the other platform, her forearms resting in her lap. "You believe I have made a mistake," the alien said directly. "I believe you misunderstood our language," Ellie replied gently. "Human language is full of expressions that aren't meant to be taken literally." "Give me examples." Ellie thought for a moment. "Well, when we say it's raining cats and dogs, we don't mean actual animals are falling from the sky, it just means it's raining heavily." Zaravek's scales shifted to a lighter shade. "This is a metaphor." "Exactly. And when someone says they could eat someone up or that someone looks delicious, it's usually a metaphor for finding them attractive." "But why use consumption as a metaphor for attraction?" Zaravek asked, genuinely confused. "It seems threatening." Ellie smiled. "I guess it does sound strange when you put it that way, but humans often connect food with pleasure, and attraction is also pleasurable, so the metaphors get mixed together." Zaravek seemed to consider this. "In my research, I found many human males using these expressions toward females. If they are metaphors for attraction, why do females not use them equally toward males?" "Some do," Ellie said, "but you're right that it's more common for men to use those expressions. Human gender dynamics are complicated. In Corellian society, females are dominant," Zaravek explained. "When we observed human society and saw that males were physically larger and often in positions of power, and then found these expressions about consuming females, You thought they were literally eating women, Ellie finished. I understand how the misunderstanding happened, but I promise you, human men do not eat women. Zaravek was quiet for a moment, her scales slowly changing from green to blue. If I have made such a fundamental error, the consequences could be severe. We have taken citizens from your planet without permission. This could be seen as an act of aggression. It was a mistake, Ellie said. A well-intentioned mistake. Explain that to your leaders. The High Council will not be pleased, Zaravek said quietly. And Captain Thelnar still believes our original understanding was correct. Before Ellie could respond, an alarm began to sound throughout the ship. The walls pulsed with red light. What's happening? Ellie asked, standing up quickly. Zaravek touched a panel on her wrist and a holographic display appeared in the air. She read something in her own language, her scales turning a pale white color that Ellie had come to recognize as alarm. Your species has launched weapons at our ship, she said, her voice urgent. Primitive missiles, but they could cause damage. Earth is defending itself, Ellie said. They think you've attacked us by taking us. We must explain the misunderstanding, Zaravek said. Before this escalates further, the ship suddenly shuddered violently, throwing both of them against the wall. The lights flickered, and the alarm grew louder. We've been hit, Zaravek said, regaining her balance. We must get to the bridge. She helped Ellie up and they hurried down the corridor. The ship shook again as another impact struck somewhere below them. They reached a large circular room filled with alien technology and several Corellians working frantically at various stations. Captain Thelnar stood in the center, barking orders, in their native language. She turned when Zaravek and Ellie entered, her scales a deep angry red. Why have you brought the human here? Captain, we must communicate with their leaders, Zaravek said urgently. Explain that we meant no harm. No harm? Thelnar hissed. They are attacking us. Because they think we attacked them first? Ellie interjected. By taking their people. Thelnar's eyes narrowed as she looked at Ellie. Your species is primitive, but dangerous. If we do not defend ourselves, this isn't about defense anymore, Ellie interrupted, stepping forward bravely. This is about preventing a war based on a misunderstanding. Let me talk to them, let me explain. Another impact rocked the ship, harder this time. Sparks flew from one of the control panels, and a Corellian cried out in pain. Our shields are failing, reported another Corellian. We cannot withstand many more hits. Captain Thelnar looked from the damage reports to Ellie, then to Zaravek. Her scales shifted through several colors as she appeared to weigh her options. Very well, she said finally. You will speak to your leaders. Explain our mistake. Tell them we will return their people unharmed. Thank you, Ellie said, relieved. But know this, human, Thelnar added, leaning close. If your words fail, if your species continues to attack despite your explanation, we will defend ourselves with much greater force than you can imagine. Ellie swallowed hard but nodded. I understand. Zaravek led Ellie to a console near the center of the bridge. This will connect to your planet's communication systems. You can broadcast a message that most of your world will receive. Ellie stared at the alien technology, suddenly overwhelmed by the responsibility. The fate of both species might depend on her words. What do I say? She whispered to Zaravek. The truth, the alien replied simply. That's usually the best place to start. Ellie took a deep breath and nodded. Zaravek activated the system, and a small light indicated that Ellie was now broadcasting to Earth. My name is Ellie Mason, she began, her voice shaking slightly. I'm speaking to you from an alien spacecraft. I'm one of 5 women who were taken last night. We are unharmed. This is going to sound crazy, but the aliens who took us thought they were rescuing us. They had a misunderstanding about human language. They thought human men were literally eating women. She paused, realizing how absurd it sounded. But she had to continue. They misunderstood phrases like eat you up or have you for dinner. They thought they were saving us. They made a mistake. Please stop attacking their ship. We can resolve this peacefully. The ship shuddered again as another missile found its mark. Please, Ellie added, more urgently now. We're all on this ship. If you destroy it, you'll kill us too. Give us a chance to work this out. The next 24 hours were tense but productive. The damaged Corellian ship remained in orbit around Earth while negotiations took place. Captain Thelnar had agreed to allow Lieutenant Rivera to board the ship with a small team to confirm the safety of the abducted women and to begin formal diplomatic discussions. Ellie watched as the Earth shuttle docked with the alien vessel. It was a strange feeling seeing her home planet from space, a beautiful blue sphere hanging in the blackness. It's breathtaking, she said to Zaravek, who stood beside her at the viewing portal. Yes, the alien agreed. Your world has much more water than ours. The Corellian homeworld is mostly desert and mountains. The airlock opened, and Lieutenant Rivera entered along with 3 other humans in military uniforms. They were escorted by Corellian guards but didn't appear too concerned about their alien hosts. Amy Rivera was younger than Ellie had expected from her voice, perhaps in her early 30s, with short black hair and alert, intelligent eyes. She carried herself with confidence as she approached the 5 women. Ladies, she greeted them. I'm Lieutenant Amy Rivera. Are you all okay? We're fine, Patricia answered. Though we'd like to go home. That's the plan, Amy assured them. But first we need to make sure this misunderstanding doesn't happen again. The President has authorized me to begin preliminary diplomatic discussions with the Corellians. You're not just going to take us and leave? Diane asked, surprised. Amy shook her head. This is first contact with an advanced alien civilization. We can't just walk away, this is too important. She turned to Captain Thelnar, who had entered the room with several other high-ranking Corellians. Captain, I bring greetings from the President of the United States and the United Nations Security Council. We appreciate your willingness to peacefully resolve this situation. Thelnar's scales shifted to a formal blue color. We regret the misunderstanding that led to these events. It was not our intention to commit an act of aggression against your world. We understand, Amy said diplomatically. Cultural and linguistic misunderstandings happen even between different human nations. Between different species, they're almost inevitable. Perhaps, Brooke suddenly spoke up. This happened for a reason. Everyone looked at the teenager in surprise. What do you mean? Ellie asked. I mean, maybe this mistake, as embarrassing as it is, was the perfect way for our species to meet, Brooke explained. Think about it. If the Corellians had just shown up in their spaceship and said hello, Earth might have panicked. There could have been a much worse misunderstanding. But this way. She looked at the aliens, then back at her fellow humans. This way, we're already talking about cultural differences and finding common ground. There was a thoughtful silence as everyone considered Brooke's words. The young one is wise, Zaravek said finally. Sometimes the most meaningful connections begin with misunderstandings. Great, Samantha said. So we're all friends now. Can I go home? I have patients who need me. Amy nodded. Yes, arrangements are being made to return you all safely, but there's something else we need to discuss first. She looked at Captain Thelnar. Our scientists have questions about your technology, your culture, your world. This could be the beginning of a beneficial relationship between our species. The High Council will need to approve any formal diplomatic relations, Thelnar replied. But I am authorized to open preliminary discussions. Then let's begin, Amy said. The discussions continued for hours. Amy and her team asked questions about Corellian society, technology, and biology, while the aliens were equally curious about humans. The 5 abducted women participated as well, with Diane offering her scientific expertise and Patricia sharing her military knowledge. Ellie found herself repeatedly explaining human expressions and slang to the confused aliens. It was fascinating to see how many phrases humans use daily that made no literal sense. So when you say break a leg, you're actually wishing someone good luck? Zaravek asked, bewildered. Exactly, Ellie confirmed. And when we say it's raining cats and dogs, no animals are actually falling from the sky. Your language is unnecessarily complicated, the alien observed. Maybe, Ellie admitted with a smile. But it's also rich and creative. As the discussions progressed, Brooke became increasingly engaged with the aliens. She asked questions about their education system, their art, their philosophy. The teenager seemed genuinely fascinated by everything Corellian. During a break, in the talks, she approached Captain Thelnar directly. "I have a request," she said boldly. The captain's scales shifted to a curious purple. "What is it, young human?" "I want to stay," Brooke said, "to learn about your people, to be an exchange student like we have on Earth between different countries." "Brooke, you can't be serious," Samantha protested. "Your parents must be worried." "Sick. My parents barely notice when I'm around," Brooke replied, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "And this is the opportunity of a lifetime. I could be the first human to really understand another intelligent species." Captain Thelnar seemed intrigued by the idea. Such an exchange could be valuable, but it would require approval from both your leaders and ours. Lieutenant Rivera had overheard the conversation. "That's a complicated request, Brooke. There are diplomatic, legal, and safety concerns to consider." "But it's not impossible?" Brooke pressed. Amy hesitated. "I suppose it could be arranged with the proper agreements in place, but your parents would have to consent." "They will," Brooke said confidently, "once they understand how important this is." Ellie watched the teenager with a mixture of admiration and concern. Brooke's enthusiasm was understandable. What young person wouldn't be excited by the chance to visit another world? But space was dangerous, and they still knew relatively little about the Corellians. "Brooke," she said gently, "maybe you should go home first. Talk to your parents. Think about this carefully. If diplomatic relations are established, there will be other opportunities to visit the Corellians." "She's right," Diane added. "This decision shouldn't be made hastily." Brooke looked disappointed, but nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but I'm not giving up on this idea." Later, as preparations were made for the humans to return to Earth, Ellie found Zaravek alone in one of the ship's observation rooms. The alien was staring at Earth, her scales a muted blue that Ellie had come to recognize as sadness. "Are you okay?" Ellie asked, joining her at the viewing portal. "I am embarrassed," Zaravek admitted. "My mistake nearly caused a conflict between our species. The High Council will not be pleased." "You were trying to help," Ellie said kindly. "Your heart was in the right place, even if your understanding wasn't heart." Zaravek tilted her head. "Another metaphor?" Ellie laughed. "Yes. I meant your intentions were good. Still, I will face consequences when we return home." The alien's scales darkened further. "My career as a xenobiologist may be over. Or it could just be beginning," Ellie suggested. "You've had more direct contact with humans than any other Corellian. That knowledge is valuable." Zaravek considered this. "Perhaps, if the High Council sees it that way. I'll make sure Lieutenant Rivera knows how helpful you've been," Ellie promised. "That might count for something in the diplomatic discussions." "Thank you, Ellie." Zaravek's scales lightened slightly. "I am glad we met despite the circumstances." "Me too," Ellie replied, surprised to realize it was true. As frightening and disruptive as the experience had been, it had also been extraordinary. The ship's communication system suddenly activated, and Captain Thelnar's voice spoke in Corellian. Zaravek listened, then turned to Ellie. "It is time," she said. "The Earth shuttle is ready to take you and the others home." Ellie nodded, feeling an unexpected reluctance to leave. "Will we see each other again?" "I hope so," Zaravek replied. "If our worlds establish formal relations, perhaps I could visit your farm someday. I would like to see this Montana you speak of." "I'd like that," Ellie said with a smile. "And I want to meet Rusty, my dog. I bet he'd find you fascinating." They walked together to the shuttle bay where the others were waiting. The 5 women had changed from their night clothes into simple jumpsuits provided by the Corellians. Lieutenant Rivera and her team stood ready to escort them home. Patricia looked relieved to be leaving. Samantha was quiet but appeared eager to return to her normal life. Diane was deep in conversation with one of the Corellian scientists, exchanging information until the last possible moment, and Brooke was arguing again with Amy Rivera. Just a few more days, the teenager was saying, until the formal diplomatic team arrives. I could help with translations and cultural explanations. Brooke, we've been over this, Amy replied patiently. You need to go home first. Your parents have legal custody and they want you back. After that, if arrangements can be made, fine. Brooke sighed dramatically. But I'm coming back. This isn't over. Captain Thelnar approached the group, her scales now a formal diplomatic gold color. Humans, on behalf of the Corellian Empire, I express regret for the misunderstanding that led to your temporary relocation. We wish you safe passage home, and look forward to more positive interactions between our species. Thank you, Captain, Lieutenant Rivera replied. Earth looks forward to peaceful relations with the Corellian Empire. 6 months had passed since the day a Corellian ship appeared over Ellie's farm. 6 months of debriefings, medical tests, media interviews, and gradual adjustment to a new normal. The world had changed dramatically in that time, as humanity grappled with the reality that they were not alone in the universe. Ellie stood on her porch watching the Montana sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Rusty lay at her feet, no longer startled by the occasional strange aircraft that passed overhead. The old farmhouse looked much the same as it always had, but Ellie herself was different. Her phone buzzed with a notification. She checked it and smiled. Another message from Zaravek. The Corellian had been sending regular updates since the establishment of formal diplomatic relations between Earth and the Corellian Empire. The cultural exchange program has been approved by both governments, the message read. I will be part of the first delegation to live among humans. My assignment, Montana, arriving next week. Ellie typed back a quick reply. The guest room is ready. Rusty can't wait to meet you. It still amazed her sometimes, how easily she could now communicate with a being from another world. The Corellians had provided special communication devices to the 5 women who had been abducted, partly as a gesture of goodwill, and partly because they recognized the value of maintaining contact with humans who understood their mistake. A car appeared on the long driveway leading to Ellie's farm. She recognized it immediately, the government vehicle that brought Colonel Rivera, recently promoted from lieutenant, for her monthly check-in. Amy stepped out of the car, looking more relaxed than usual in jeans and a casual jacket rather than her uniform. Evening, Ellie, she called, walking up to the porch. This isn't your usual visit day, Ellie observed, offering Amy a seat in one of the porch chairs. Unofficial visit, Amy replied, sitting down with a sigh. I needed to get away from the base for a while. The diplomatic talks are getting intense. Problems? Ellie asked, concerned. Not exactly, just complicated. The Corellians want to share some of their technology with us, but our governments can't agree on who gets what and how it should be used. Amy shook her head. Politics is politics, even with aliens involved. Rusty got up and put his head on Amy's knee. She scratched behind his ears absently. I got a message from Zaravek, Ellie said. She's coming next week as part of the cultural exchange. Amy nodded. I know. I approved her assignment personally. Thought it would be fitting, considering how this all started. How are the others doing? Ellie asked. Though they had all gone their separate ways after returning to Earth, Ellie tried to keep in touch with the women who had shared her extraordinary experience. Diane's heading the new xenobiology department at MIT, Amy said. Samantha's back at her hospital but now specializes in comparative physiology, looking at how alien biology might compare to human. And Patricia? Colonel Harrison is my new boss, Amy said with a wry smile. Turns out the Air Force thought her experience made her perfect to oversee the military aspects of alien relations. And Brooke? Ellie asked, though she already knew the answer. Still on the Corellian homeworld, Amy confirmed. The first human exchange student to another planet. Her video reports are causing quite a sensation. Did you see her latest? Ellie nodded. It's amazing how well she's adapted. She's practically fluent in their language now. Brooke had indeed achieved her dream of visiting the Corellian world. After lengthy negotiations and despite her parents' initial reluctance, she had been allowed to go as part of the first cultural exchange program. Her regular video updates showed her thriving among the aliens, learning their ways and teaching them about human culture in return. Speaking of adaptations, Amy said, pulling a tablet from her bag, I wanted to show you the latest design for the Joint Human Corellian Research Station. She handed the tablet to Ellie, who swiped through images of a large space station with both human and Corellian architecture blended together. It's beautiful, Ellie said. When will it be built? Construction starts next month. The Corellians are providing most of the technology, but it's a true collaboration. Amy took back the tablet. They're still deciding who will staff it. Scientists mostly, but also cultural experts. She gave Ellie a meaningful look. Me? Ellie asked, surprised. I'm not a scientist or a diplomat. But you understand the Corellians better than most, Amy pointed out. You were the one who prevented a potential war through clear communication. That's a valuable skill. Ellie looked out over her farm, considering the idea. 6 months ago, leaving this place would have been unthinkable. It was her home, her anchor after losing her husband, but now, I'll think about it, she said finally. Amy nodded, not pushing further. That's all I ask. It's still several months away. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. It's strange, Ellie said eventually. I used to look at the stars and think how small I was. Now I look at them and think about who else might be looking back. The universe got a lot bigger and a lot smaller at the same time, Amy agreed. Do you think there are others out there? Besides the Corellians? Amy shrugged. The Corellians say they've encountered 3 other intelligent species. None as similar to them as humans are, which is part of why they're so interested in us. The thought was both exciting and slightly terrifying. A galaxy full of different beings, each with their own misunderstandings waiting to happen. I should get back, Amy said, standing up. Early meeting tomorrow with the Corellian science minister. Something about their faster-than-light drive. Technology. Sounds important, Ellie said, walking her to her car. It is, but so is this. Amy gestured to the farm, the open sky, the peaceful evening. Keeping perspective on what we're working to protect. After Amy left, Ellie went inside and opened her laptop. She had been working on something in her spare time, a dictionary of human expressions and their literal versus figurative meanings. It had started as a personal project to help Zaravek, but had grown into something more comprehensive. She added a few new entries, thinking about how this simple project might actually help prevent future misunderstandings. It wasn't groundbreaking, scientific work or high-level diplomacy, but it was important in its own way. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, but not from Zaravek this time. It was from Kate, her neighbor. Just heard a Corellian is coming to stay with you. The message read, the whole town is talking about it. Need any help getting ready? Ellie smiled. Word traveled fast in small communities. She had worried at first about how her neighbors would react to her newfound connection to the aliens, but most had been supportive, even curious. Thanks, she typed back. Maybe come over Sunday. I could use advice on what foods to prepare. Not sure what Corellians can eat. Her phone rang almost immediately after she sent the message. Kate, of course, eager to be involved in this historic moment. As Ellie answered and began explaining what she knew about Corellian dietary needs, not much, she looked at the night sky through her kitchen window. Somewhere up there was the Corellian homeworld. Somewhere up there, Zaravek was preparing to visit Earth, probably just as nervous and excited as Ellie had been on the alien ship. A week later, Ellie stood in a field near her farm, watching as a small Corellian shuttle descended from the sky. It was much less dramatic than the first time she had seen an alien craft. No blue beams of light, no loss of consciousness. just a sleek vessel settling gently onto the grass in broad daylight, with full permission from Earth authorities. Beside her stood Colonel Rivera, representing the official welcome committee, and Kate, who had insisted on being present for this historic moment. Rusty sat at Ellie's feet, watching the spacecraft with curious eyes but no fear. The shuttle door opened, and Zaravek emerged. She looked much as Ellie remembered, tall and slender, with scales that shifted between blue and green in the sunlight. She wore what appeared to be a formal Corellian garment, with symbols that probably denoted her status as a diplomatic representative. Behind her came two other Corellians, carrying various containers that likely held her belongings. They set these down near the shuttle and then returned inside, preparing to leave. Zaravek approached the small group of humans, her steps careful on the unfamiliar ground. When she reached them, she raised all four of her hands in the traditional Corellian greeting. "Ellie Mason," she said, her voice translated through a small device at her throat. "It is good to see you again." "Welcome to Earth, Zaravek," Ellie replied with a warm smile. "Officially this time." Colonel Rivera stepped forward with a formal greeting, presenting Zaravek with credentials that would identify her as a diplomatic visitor. Kate stared openly, clearly fascinated by the alien, and Rusty, after a moment of hesitation, approached Zaravek and sniffed curiously at her lower hands. The alien froze, unsure how to respond to the dog. "It's okay," Ellie assured her. "He's friendly. You can pet him if you want." Tentatively, Zaravek reached down with one hand and touched Rusty's head. The dog responded by wagging his tail, and the alien's scales shifted to a lighter, pleased color. "I have studied Earth animals extensively," she said, continuing to pet Rusty with growing confidence. "But experiencing them directly is different." The large meeting room on the Corellian ship was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Zaravek stood nervously in front of the High Council. Her scales changed color slightly as she felt all eyes on her. She was about to share something important, something terrible she had discovered about humans. "Respected council members, I have studied Earth transmissions for 3 years now," she said, her voice clear but worried. "I believe I have found something very disturbing about humans that we must address." The 7 council members leaned forward. They were all female, as were most Corellians in positions of power. Their scales shimmered under the soft blue lights. "Continue, junior researcher," said the head council member, her 4 arms folded. In front of her chest, Zaravek touched a control panel and images from Earth appeared on the large screen behind her. They were clips from human movies, TV shows, and social media. "As you can see here," she pointed to a scene of a man saying he would eat a woman up on what appeared to be a human dating ritual, and here, another clip showed a man talking about having a woman for dinner. The evidence suggests that human males consume their females. Gasps filled the room. One council member's scales turned almost white with shock. "Are you certain of this?" asked another council member, her voice shaking. "The language patterns are clear," Zaravek said. "They speak of eating out their females, finding them delicious and having them for dinner. There are thousands of examples in their media. It seems to be an accepted practice in their society." The head council member stood up. She was taller than the others, her scales a deep blue that showed her age and wisdom. "If this is true, we cannot stand by and do nothing. The Corellian Empire has always protected the weak and vulnerable across the galaxy. This would be a clear violation of universal rights." "What do you suggest we do?" asked another council member. "We must send a rescue mission," the head council member decided. "We will save human females from this terrible fate." Zaravek felt a mix of pride and fear. Her discovery would lead to action, but she worried about the risks of interfering with a species they had not yet officially contacted. "Junior researcher Zaravek, you will join this mission as our cultural expert," the head council member announced. "Captain Thelnar will lead the operation. You leave in 3 cycles. On Earth, far from the alien ship where her fate was being decided, Ellie Mason walked through her small farm as the sun began to set. The Montana sky turned orange and purple above her. Her dog, Rusty, ran circles around her legs, happy to be outside after a day of rain. "Easy, boy," Ellie said with a laugh. She was 30 years old with brown hair that she kept in a simple ponytail. Her hands were rough from farm work, and her face was lightly tanned from days spent outside. The farm had been her husband's dream. After he died in a military training accident 3 years ago, Ellie had decided to keep it going. It wasn't easy, but she managed. She looked at the fields where her crops were growing. The rain had been good for them. Maybe this year would be better than the last. Rusty suddenly stopped running and looked up, his ears alert. He gave a low growl. "What is it, boy?" Ellie asked, following his gaze to the sky. There was nothing there but the first stars beginning to appear. She shrugged and headed back to the house. It was a simple 2-story building with a wide porch. Her nearest neighbor, Kate, lived 3 miles down the road. Ellie didn't mind the quiet most days, but sometimes the loneliness hit hard. Inside, she made a simple dinner and ate while watching the news on her old TV. There was talk about strange lights seen in the sky over several countries in the past week. Some people thought they were new military aircraft. Others suggested wilder theories. Ellie wasn't interested. She had real things to worry about, like the leak in the barn roof and the tractor that needed fixing. After dinner, she took a quick shower and got ready for bed. It was barely 9 o'clock, but she liked to rise with the sun. Rusty settled on the floor beside her bed as she turned out the light. Just as she was falling asleep, Rusty jumped up and started barking wildly at the window. "Rusty, quiet down," Ellie mumbled, still half asleep, but the dog wouldn't stop. He barked louder, more urgently. Ellie sat up and switched on the bedside lamp. "What's gotten into you?" That's when she noticed the strange blue light coming through her bedroom window. It wasn't like anything she had seen before. Not headlights or flashlights or the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. She got out of bed and went to the window. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. A large object hovered over her farm. It was shaped like a flattened disc with glowing blue lights around its edges. It was huge, at least as big as her entire house, and it made no sound at all. "That's not possible," Ellie whispered. Rusty continued to bark as the strange craft slowly moved closer to the house. Ellie's first thought was to call someone, the police, the military, anyone. She grabbed her phone from the bedside table, but there was no signal. Her second thought was more practical. She ran to her closet and pulled out the shotgun her husband had taught her to use. She checked that it was loaded, though she doubted it would do much good against whatever was outside. The blue light grew brighter, filling her entire bedroom now. Rusty's barks became more frantic. Ellie ran downstairs, shotgun in hand. She reached the kitchen just as all the power in the house went out. The sudden darkness was complete except for the blue light that now came through every window. "Stay back," she shouted, though she wasn't sure if anything out there could hear her. The blue light intensified until it was almost blinding. Ellie felt a strange sensation, like her body was becoming lighter. The shotgun slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Rusty's bark seemed to fade away, though she could still see him jumping and spinning in the blue light. Her feet lifted off the floor. She tried to grab onto something, anything, but her hands couldn't seem to grip. The last thing Ellie saw before she lost consciousness was her kitchen getting smaller below her as she was pulled upward through the ceiling, through the roof, toward the strange craft that had come to her farm in the middle of the night. And then everything went black.